Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. Ambassador Chaz Freeman will be here with us in just a minute. Just how dark are these days in America? But first this. My friends, if you care about your liberty and your right to control your own future, you need to hear about this. From October 10th to 12th, Mikkel Thorpe, host of the Expat Money Show, is bringing together top experts from around the world for the Expat Money Online Summit, and it's completely free to attend. You'll learn how to legally protect your wealth, secure second residences and citizenships, reduce your tax burden, and own property abroad, all to safeguard your freedom. This year's focus is on Latin America, where opportunity is booming. Argentina is shifting to free markets. El Salvador is undergoing a dramatic transformation, and Panama and Paraguay are offering simple residency programs. A Plan B is no longer optional, it's essential. Reserve your free ticket at expatmoneysummit.com. And if you want VIP access with special perks, including lifetime replay access and exclusive VIP panels, use promo code JUDGE for 20% off your upgrade. That's expatmoneysummit.com, promo code JUDGE. Ambassador, good day to you, my friend. Welcome here, and thank you for joining us. Before we get to how dark these days are and Israel's attack on Doha and President Trump's escalation of the war in Ukraine, why do you think Benjamin Netanyahu saw fit to go on national television this weekend and deny that Israel assassinated Charlie Kirk?
Well, we are full of conspiracy theories. Evidently, there is evidence that Mr. Kirk, in his last days, felt that he was being singled out for criticism by pro-Zionist elements. And he apparently was fearful for his life. At least that's what he said to a number of people. And of course, he's been beatified by the Republican Party and is basically being used. His death is being used to drive a wedge in politics, hopefully from the point of view of the president, bringing youth to the polls in 2026 in the midterms. So it's a very political thing, but there is this undertone of, Israel has a reputation for assassinating people, and there's apparently quite a bit of, I think, probably nonsense about this on the internet.
What do you think will be the geopolitical fallout of the American approved Israeli perpetrated attack on a civilian neighborhood in Doha?
I think we're just beginning to see the results of that. There's been a big conference between Arab and Muslim nations in Doha, both to express solidarity with Qatar and also to review their stand on Israel and on the United States. I think we're now seeing the fallout from earlier incidents brought together with this one, where the Gulf Arab states have mortgaged their future and depended on the United States to protect them, and they find that the United States doesn't protect them. When Iran shoots down a drone in the Gulf of Strait of Hormuz, Donald Trump shrugs. That's the first term. When the Houthis strike Abqaiq, the main interchange for petroleum in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, Trump says that's a Saudi problem. When Trump urges Hamas to examine what appears to be an Israeli drafted peace proposal, that turns out to be a ruse to bring everybody together in Doha, and Israel attacks them in a pattern that's now very familiar. So the question is, What does engagement with Israel by, for example, the United Arab Emirates, which is part of the so-called Abraham Accords, get for the UAE? It doesn't protect anybody in the Gulf, evidently, to have decent ties with Israel. It doesn't seem to protect anybody to have ties with the United States. So we're seeing a number of proposals put forward. One is that the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and its 57 members will now go after Israel in the General Assembly and in the UN. They've not been favorable to Israel, but they've not been proactive. Now, apparently, they may be. There is a review going on of defense ties with the United States. There's a $42 billion set of contracts pending with Qatar from American arms manufacturers. There's a chance now that that will not go through, and that the Qataris will turn to China or someone else to meet their requirements. In any event, I think what we're going to see at a minimum is an acceleration of a process that's been ongoing for some years, namely countries in the region diversifying their relations, countries in the region like the Arab Gulf Cooperation Council countries and Iran making up, balancing an increasingly aggressive Israel. And right in the middle of all this, of course, we have our President Trump, assuring the Qataris of two things. One, he didn't know about this assault by Israel, and that may or may not be true. But second, more important, that Israel won't do it again. Just after he did that, Netanyahu came out and said, "Of course we will. We'll attack anybody in anywhere if we think that they're harboring an enemy of Israel." And of course, Israel has made enemies of all of the Palestinians and most of the countries in the region. So this is a recipe for perpetual war. And it's happening as young people in the United States and elsewhere have a very negative opinion of Israel. Jewish Americans, many of them don't want to be involved with Israel, which they see as not a Jewish state, but a Zionist state, drawing a distinction between their religion and an ethno-religious tyranny over Arabs in the Middle East. So lots going on, and I think not most of it is pretty dark, as you said.
What does the United States gain from its unique, even bizarre relationship to Israel?
Not very much, if anything. Over the years, we've seen Israel launch surprise attacks on other countries. For example, the '67 war. Of course, their independence war was a surprise attack, as in which they took a great deal more than the UN proposed two-state partition of Palestine had proposed to give them. They have continued a pattern of doing things that get us into trouble. So they are an albatross, really, around our relations with both the countries of West Asia and more broadly the Islamic world. They do provide brain power for defense research, but that could just as well be done in New Jersey. It doesn't have to be done in Israel. They have invented an enormous array of police state enforcement measures, surveillance systems, drones, and this sort of thing. They've taught us how to torture people. Abu Ghraib was a product of Israeli instruction. But, on the other side, they kill Americans with impunity. They kill other people with impunity. They defy requests from the United States for them to do or not do things. They don't really pay much attention to our interests at all. And of course, they are the principal foreign interferer in our election process. With all of the attention that's been given to Russian alleged intervention in our elections, it's apparently taboo to talk about the far more active, overt Israeli effort to skew elections in favor of its interests.
And of course, they have a nuclear weapon based on technology stolen from us, unauthorized, unacknowledged, and the federal government won't even admit it.
Well, that's another problem. More recently, we've been forced to enforce an Israeli agenda, not just ignoring their violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the fact that they've actually done what they accuse Iran of doing, clandestinely develop a nuclear arsenal. Not only that, but we are actually enforcing Israeli censorship on our campuses. We're arresting people, we're deporting people if they are critical of Israel. We're depriving universities of research funds if they're critical of Israel. This is basically the US government acting on behalf of a foreign government against the protections that Americans are supposed to enjoy under the First Amendment: freedom of speech, academic freedom, freedom to petition the government for a change in policy, in other words, to protest, surveillance, and now we have apparently got a visa policy that we won't give a visa to anybody who's been critical of Israel. We insist on inspecting their cell phones.
Jeez, there are grave constitutional implications there that the government would condition a governmental benefit, a visa, upon the non-assertion of a fundamental liberty, your right to speak freely about anything you want to speak about. There are grave constitutional implications there, but this government doesn't seem to care. I mean, there are grave constitutional implications about the president murdering people on speedboats in the Caribbean.
Well, I agree that it doesn't appear that the Constitution has any respect from this administration in quite a number of areas. They have a theory that the second article of the Constitution gives the president the power to do anything he wants with no restraints. They totally ignore the Article 1, which provides most power to the Congress. Of course, they're helped in that by the fact that the Congress has decided to go AWOL. It's missing in action. It doesn't stand up for its prerogatives and powers. And of course, the judiciary has been skewed in favor of Mr. Trump and his administration. And we're not getting much support from the Supreme Court, at least, as a result.
Didn't Doha arguably bribe President Trump with a $400 million jet that they gave him?
Well, there is a clause in the Constitution which prohibits the acceptance of gifts, emoluments from foreign governments. He doesn't seem to have paid attention to that. Yes, the Qataris have made every effort to ingratiate themselves with President Trump and the United States. And I think they're genuinely shocked that we don't come to their aid when they're attacked.
Do you think that Mr. Witkoff is an unwitting dupe of the president? I mean, twice now he arranged serious negotiations, and in one case we bombed Iran, and in the other case the Israelis tried to kill the negotiators. Or do you think he's in on the plan, in on the Trump Netanyahu orchestrated deceptions?
I would like to think that he is a dupe rather than a conspirator in this regard. But I have to say, those aren't the only two examples. There's, of course, Operation Spiderweb, which the Ukrainians launched in conjunction with peace talks in Istanbul. So it sounds as though anything that involves American diplomacy on behalf of peace, meetings in foreign lands, it has to be regarded with great suspicion, because it may be simply a distraction while an attack is carried out.
Last weekend, according to the police, 110,000. According to the media, 1 million human beings demonstrated in London against the government. They did what is standard in America, but what is unheard of in Great Britain. I didn't even know this. It's actually against the law in Great Britain. They waved the Union Jack as they were marching. How significant is a crowd of this magnitude uniformly opposed to the government?
I think it's very significant, and let's not forget that this crowd, under British law, have been, if they are active on behalf of Palestine and certain organizations arguing for Palestinian rights, they are officially branded as terrorists, and they are arrested under anti-terrorism laws. So this, 1 million people in London are terrorists, apparently. This is terribly significant, I think. It also, however, does draw attention to the classic, now apparently erased, differences between us and the English. The English have all sorts of secrecy laws and controls on their press and so forth, and until recently we didn't. Unfortunately, we're coming to resemble them now.
Wow. How close to war do you think the United States is, whether it's a foreign war with the Israelis against Iran, whether it's boots on the ground in Gaza, intimated yesterday by Marco Rubio, or whether it's a civil war here at home?
Gosh, Israel is going to attack Iran again. They've made it quite clear they intend to do that. I hope we have the good sense to stay out of that. I think, in fact, that the only thing that will stop the genocide in Gaza is military intervention, but I don't expect it from the West. This whole issue has disgraced the West in the eyes of the world and divided us. We no longer have the automatic moral authority and followership that we once did. I think that it's entirely possible that there will be a misstep in Ukraine that draws us in, although we're trying very hard, apparently, to stay out and hand it off to the Europeans. And I would note that there's another issue out there, which is our intervention in the Chinese Civil War to protect the losing side, Taiwan, against China and the government of China, which for many, many decades we refused to recognize. So, there is, the Chinese are now the military balance is very much in their favor. They are restrained. They don't want to use force, but perhaps somebody will do something, either accidental or intentional, that sets off a war there. And that would be a horror, because it would very quickly, I think, go nuclear.
Why is it that, aside from the fact that there's no alliteration, the Genocide Joe moniker has not stuck to Donald Trump?
His supporters, who are numerous enough to win him an election twice, just reject all of that. His supporters are almost a cult rather than a political movement, and they just reject that. And we can see, in the case of Charlie Kirk, whom you asked about at the beginning of the program, he has, as I said, been beatified. But you have people on the right who, for example, mock the dead kids at Sandy Hook. You have people who said nothing about two murdered Michigan state senators. So there seem to be different rules for the right and the left, and the right has the ability to hurl insults, and the left does not. I don't know how to explain it. It's not, to use the phrase from Fox, it's not fair and balanced.
Yeah. Last night we did a lengthy and fascinating interview with Max Blumenthal, who had just finished speaking with sources of his inside and outside the White House about Charlie's conversion. Well, figuratively and literally, he was about to convert to Catholicism, but that's not what we were talking about. We're talking about his conversion on the issue of Israel and Gaza. Trump shouted at him when he tried to change Trump's mind, and Kirk was the object of attempted intimidation by some of his Zionist donors. But here's a fascinating clip. Now, this is October of 23. This is right after October 7th, in which he's musing aloud about his doubts about Israel. Cut number 1.
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that's an IDF soldier. Right? The whole country is surveilled. I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand-down order? Was there a stand-down order? They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is.
Yeah.
The essence is this. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard right government has a mandate. I got to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Yep.
I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? There are some serious questions here, Patrick, and let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
He's a realist, and I guess realism these days is punished. We still don't know really what the motive of the assassin was. He's made out to be a leftist Antifa type, but we don't have any proof of that. On the contrary, he appears to have been quite on the other side on many issues. But as I said at the outset, and I'm sorry I haven't watched you and Max yet. I will. But I think there is a lot of evidence that Charlie Kirk was concerned about retribution from Zionist, not just his donors, but the actual Zionist government in Israel.
Dark days and a terrible state of affairs. In my view, will continue to get darker before we see the light. Ambassador, thank you very much. Thanks for your time as always. Thanks for accommodating my schedule. Thank you for letting me go across the board on all these issues with you. I love our conversations, and we hope to see you again next week.
I would like to see Israel again be a light to the other nations of the world rather than an abomination, which is what has become. And if I may say so, I hope you can think of some happy question or jolly issue to raise, because this is pretty hard to take, actually.
Yes. Thank you, Ambassador. All the best, my dear friend.
Thank you.
Coming up later today at 11 this morning, Aaron Mate at 2:15. This afternoon, Scott Ritter at 3 o'clock, Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.